This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated online cinema streaming exceptional films from around the globe. Get 1 month free at mubi.com/CinemaTyler. So with the preparation for Plainview finished, all that was left was to see how the character interacts with others. Daniel Day-Lewis said that you can work in isolation developing the character, but you have no idea who the character is until they start colliding with other developed characters. The story isn't just about Daniel Plainview, it's about how he comes into conflict on the way to his goals. Plainview is the protagonist of the story and we want to see him succeed. But I think one of the most important aspects of Plainview's character is that we identify with him through his vices. He isn't an everyman type. He isn't some altruistic hero that we would identify with by feeling morally superior. Instead, we understand his ambition, his need to crush the opposition, and how devastating it is when he becomes bested.
I have a competition in me. I want no one else to succeed.
Day-Lewis, speaking as his character, said, "Whatever it takes, whatever you want me to say, I'll do that thing. Just give me your land." The moment I clap eyes on Eli, Eli starts making himself heard. I recognize a fellow shyster from that moment. It's irksome because I know I'm going to have to deal with it, but there's a satisfaction in being able to see the pure hypocrisy. Anything to reinforce my own view of the universe. Plainview is a con man of sorts. The people who own and live on the land are just another obstacle to overcome on his quest for oil. The people might as well be the same as the ground that needs to be drilled through. So what happens when the con man is bested by other con men?
What do you want me to say?
Well, he loses his shit. Fun fact, the script originally had Plainview beat Eli to death with a heavy silver tumbler instead of a bowling pin. On the earlier fight scene between Plainview and Eli, it wasn't really choreographed, but they had planned it enough so that they only had to do it once or twice. The funny thing is that they intentionally scheduled the baptism scene the next day, so Paul Dano had a chance to smack Day-Lewis around. Plainview's relationship with HW is interesting because it endears Plainview to the audience, but for all we know, HW could just be part of the con. A single father with a young boy could gain a lot of sympathy when getting leases.
Where's your wife?
She died in childbirth, Mrs. Bankside, so it's just me and my son now.
But of all the cons, perhaps the role of HW in Plainview's life is the most intense. HW doesn't know that his real father was killed by falling tools when he was a baby. He doesn't know that his relationship with Plainview as his father possibly began as a ruse, as just a means to get oil. But Plainview has conned himself. He cares for his son and realizes how much he loves HW in the wake of sending him away.
I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my boy! I've abandoned my child! Oh, here he is. He's right here.
Whoops, that's the wrong clip.
I've abandoned my child! I've abandoned my boy!
There we go. But at the end of the movie, he has gotten everything that he wanted. He bested Henry and Eli, but in revealing the truth to HW, he has actually bested himself. He has now fully separated himself from humanity. Day-Lewis said, "There's no part of him that understands what the responsibility is of a parent, and he's not so consciously cynical as to see, except perhaps at the end when he's had time to ruminate upon his life and look back upon it, to see that this young man was a cute face to buy land. That, in effect, was part of the attraction. You know, he understood pretty quickly that it was no bad thing to have this appendage with him. There was real love, real affection, but nonetheless, he regarded this unnaturally mature child as a partner, as a working partner in his life. So at the end of the film, he has gotten the success that he has always wanted and bested those who have bested him, and yet he sheds himself of his only ally in the world." Day-Lewis said, "At some point, the process of getting the oil is more important than the oil itself."
We'll make you a millionaire while you're sitting here from 1 minute to the next.
What else would I do with myself?
Perhaps he doesn't know what to do now that there are no more holes to drill.
I mean, where does competition like that come from?
It's primal. It's primal.
You're born with it or not?
I think so. I mean, I think Daniel's experiences before we meet him certainly might have sharpened the edge of his ambition. But yeah, I think that competition is something that's in his in his origins, yeah.
Paul Dano, who played Paul in Eli Sunday, said that they didn't really rehearse while making the film, opting instead to let things happen naturally and spontaneous.
Then what I know that what actors don't want is they don't want to have a lot of chit-chat or dialogue or endless conversations when on the set or while you're trying to do something. Nobody wants it. To avoid those things, you take time to do it privately with the script. Try to not over-talk it or overthink it, leave some mystery to happen, and just create a scenario that is quiet, delicate, and productive.
Of course, this practice is not always quiet or delicate. Comedian Paul F. Tompkins, who had a small cameo in the film as this guy, said that on the first take, not having rehearsed, when Plainview turned around to speak to him,
"I wouldn't take the lease if you gave it to me as a gift."
Day-Lewis screamed in his face, which I imagine, especially coming from this character, an actor, was insanely frightening. Robert Elswit said, "Paul has very clear ideas, but he doesn't want to plan every little thing out in advance. Actors love him because they feel free to play, create, and discover. Cinematographers want to control things as much as we can. But what I've learned from Paul is how much better it can be to let accidents happen rather than try to force everything to be a certain way. He wants to see things unfold on the set, and if something isn't working, he's willing to stop in his tracks and start all over again. So there's a constant recharging and renewal of creative energy." Obviously, this was quite difficult for the focus puller and dolly grip, who had to keep up with the actors' somewhat spontaneous movements moment by moment. Elswit continues, saying, "When you work with Paul, you're shooting with anamorphic lenses, and there are no marks on the ground. There's no hair and makeup or wardrobe on set. There are no final touches, there's no ringing of the bell. There's no announcement that we're shooting. There's also no standard rehearsal, really. Once we figure out what the shot will be, there's a little bit of rehearsal, but then it starts to change and the rehearsal turns into the shooting." The freedom of the actors also requires the setting and lighting to work nearly 360 degrees. The camera can turn to follow the actors almost anywhere, and the integrity of the world would remain intact. One of the most important parts of the setting is the extras. The wonderfully convincing extras are mainly the work of casting director Cassandra Kolkundis and costume designer Mark Bridges. Anderson said that Bridges was particularly good at finding extras who have the right look. While shooting in Texas, the extras were made up of local people, but when they shot in California, they hired professional extras. Anderson said that the professional California extras were desperate to act and be noticed, while the Texas locals were not angling or positioning themselves for screen time. There was an interesting moment in an outtake that really highlights how fluid things were. In the scene where Plainview is drinking at the restaurant and harassing the Standard Oil guys, he holds out an empty glass for the waiter to take, but the actor doesn't know what to do.
Excuse me, we have 2 balls. Well, take this glass. He's completely crazy.
Anderson was also pleased at how dedicated the Texas locals were. Being non-professional, they were still able to go all day in the heat and costumes and not get fatigued. The production was a bit pressed for time, so they weren't able to do an extraordinary amount of takes, but the mentality was to shoot and try things until something worked. It wasn't about getting something specific and doing it until it was perfect. Day-Lewis said that it makes no difference how many takes you do. If your curiosity is in the right place, you might as well keep re-examining the same moment. This makes sense. If you're still interested in experimenting with the scene, and you have time, why not see what else you can do? It's only hurting the film to try and force something specific to happen without considering the ideas of the cast and crew, the interesting unforeseen things going on with the setting, and unique things that happen on the fly. Day-Lewis remembers spending a particularly long amount of time simply shooting the final line.
"I'm finished."
He said that everything you see on the screen is a result of an experiment. Daniel Day-Lewis's method acting has turned him into an almost mythical figure.
Was it hard playing Obama? I'll be honest, yeah, it was. This accent took a while. Hello, Ohio! Hello, Ohio! What makes him tick? Why doesn't he get mad? If I were him, I'd be mad all the time. But I'm not him. I'm Daniel Day-Lewis.
There were a lot of false rumors as to what Day-Lewis did to prepare for the role. One such rumor was that Day-Lewis actually built a derrick in a field behind his house, which after reading, he kinda said he liked the idea. He feels that he's often misrepresented in that most people focus on the practical details of this preparation, like researching a role by spending time in a prison or whatnot. But that's just the surface level of Daniel Day-Lewis as an actor. He says, "For me, as much as that work is a vital part of it and always fuels one's fascination, one's curiosity, the principal work is always in the imagination. That's where it's going to happen if it's going to happen anywhere at all." The imagination in very close working partnership with the subconscious, I think, because when the work is happening the way it should be, you can't be entirely in control of it. In this way, the character is formed mainly through changing your mindset. Research gives you an invaluable practical feel for what the character has to do or experience, but the core of Daniel Plainview doesn't really have much to do with whether or not he can swing a pickaxe well. His core is what motivates him and how he feels and reacts to things. A lot of the discoveries he makes about the character happen during production. Sometimes you don't realize the level of reaction a character has until they are in the moment. Part of this involves perhaps Daniel Day-Lewis's most famous technique, staying in character throughout shooting. One of the main reasons behind this technique is to try and prevent yourself from making choices. In your day-to-day life, you aren't thinking about how you're going to react to something. You just react.
My decision-making process has to happen in such a way that I'm absolutely unaware of it. Otherwise, I'm already somehow objectifying a situation that demands something utterly different.
Paul Dano said, "Because we didn't really rehearse, and so sometimes I didn't know how big something that was going to come out of him was going to be, because he's so powerful. And I don't really want to say specific instances. I think you can probably imagine hearing some of the lines from that ending scene on the page. But then, the real deal is just a whole other level, from that. I definitely had moments like that. It was cool."
Drainage, Eli.
Day-Lewis feels that it would be crazy for him to jump in and out of the mind of the character during shooting. It's somewhat unorthodox, but you can't really deny that this method hasn't yielded some incredible results.
Have you been able to, come out of character now, with so many wins?
I think I'm definitely out of character at this moment. But if I slip back into it by mistake, you can do an intervention of some kind, the Heimlich maneuver or whatever you do with actors that get stuck in character. I don't know, but no, I'm definitely out of character now.
This is also part of the reason why Day-Lewis didn't try to use any overarching metaphor in his portrayal of Daniel Plainview. His focus is narrow, happening from inside the character himself at that moment, rather than the past, future, or the objective world the character inhabits. Day-Lewis said, "The moment you step outside of something and objectify it, then you distance yourself from the experience of that life, and therefore as far as possible. No, there was no part of me that made any conscious decision about how the younger and middle-aged Plainview would develop into the older Plainview. It just seemed to develop out of the story and his experiences." Day-Lewis's practice of staying in character for months at a time was invaluable for Paul Thomas Anderson as a director.
I mean, you don't go to work with Daniel Day-Lewis. You go to work with whoever his character is. That's who you see when you get to work in the morning, and that's who leaves at night. But I know it sounds bizarre, but it actually, from a director's point of view, it's incredibly helpful. You have your own sort of three-dimensional character living there for you, so you just kind of follow him and film him.
Of course, the ideal for a director would be that the character exists as a real person, and you could throw them into whatever situation and they would remain truthful. But imagining Daniel Plainview walking around on set is kind of scary.
I think the impression people might get about Daniel is that he's very serious.
Yes.
Right.
I do. He's not?
He's not. I mean, no, he's not.
Here's another take from Paul F. Tompkins, the guy from this scene.
I don't need the lease, thank you.
We need you. We need you.
Too much confusion. Thank you for your time.
No. There's no confusion.
I'd heard that he was a little bit intense, right? But he's not really. He's really the most intense person that has ever lived.
Now, this is funny and all, but I doubt it's as super rigid as people might think. What's interesting is that there's an outtake from Phantom Thread involving a food fight between Reynolds and his sister Cyril. In between takes, someone tries to take his glass.
Hey, whoa. That's my character.
But keep it straight back and forth.
I thought it was interesting how he objects and says that it is his character's glass. And here, he breaks character and laughs in an outtake. Daniel Day-Lewis doesn't like watching his performances. He doesn't usually look at dailies, and on There Will Be Blood, he didn't want to. But Anderson asked him to come in and look at something after the first 2 weeks of shooting.
I had him look at what we had done because we all needed to collect ourselves after a week or whatever it had been to say, it's not exactly what it should be. I'm not quite sure how to say exactly what it should be, so I have no good direction.
Wait, you said that to him?
Yeah,
that was
the understanding of what was going on.
You didn't have to say it.
Day-Lewis was too far into the mindset of the character to be able to think about what he was doing in an objective way. So when he saw the footage from the first 2 weeks, after 2 years of developing the character, he thought, who the hell is that? How are we going to build a character around that? Anderson rewrote the scene because that's usually where the root of the problem is, and they recalibrated. Anderson said, it was like we were cooped up in the starting gate, and the second the starting gate opened, we fell flat on our faces with all of this energy. We had the most horrendous beginning of a film, for 2 weeks, just completely off of the mark. We got it together finally, but it was hilarious. We had been cooped up for too long. There was some stuff that was salvageable. There was some stuff that we got that was good, really good actually. But mixed in was some stuff that I wouldn't show to anyone. The most embarrassing, off-the-mark kind of stuff. And I think that is perhaps the most important thing to realize about how such a great performance, character, and film were made. We don't see the stuff that didn't work. We don't get to hear the process of Daniel Day-Lewis finding Plainview's voice, his wandering around and speaking into a dictaphone. And we don't see all of the experiments on the set that were just terrible. You have to be willing to take risks, because it's in those risks that greatness is found.
I mean, why aren't you making twice as many movies as you make, which the calendar would suggest you could do, but I gather your approach to work doesn't?
I think it's because I love to do it so much. I couldn't love it as much if I did it more often, as simple as that. It's not in retreat from that work that I go in search of other things. It's with the very positive feeling that I would like to learn about other things for a while, and I personally believe those two lives go hand in hand. They need each other. I don't think I'd have very much to offer if my experiences really were taken from other movie sets.
Thanks for watching. Want more videos on There Will Be Blood?
That's a deal. What's next?
Let me know in the comments down below. A special thanks to Mubi for sponsoring this video. Mubi is a curated cinema streaming service for everything from art house to cinema classics. What's cool is that Mubi hosts just 30 hand-picked films. Every day they present a new film, and every day they take one away. It's so fun to check the site and see what new movie has been selected that day. They even put up special collections that celebrate specific auteurs and categories. They've recently put up Kurosawa's Ran and Orson Welles' The Trial, which I highly recommend. Finally, a streaming service that is above all, streamlined. Try Mubi free for 30 days at mubi.com/CinemaTyler. That's mubi.com/CinemaTyler for your extended free trial. There Will Be Blood was chosen by my patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to suggest and vote on video topics like this one, head on over to my Patreon, pledge $1 or more, and you'll be able to participate in the next vote, which is happening soon. And if you join now, you'll get 90 days of Mubi for free. That's 3 times as long as what everyone else is getting. Thanks again for watching.